games at New Orleans and also at San Francisco. Now, for the Redskins, here's his comments as he arrived and spoke to Irv Cross.
Well, everybody's pretty loose this morning. You know, last night we were meeting and everything. We all know what's at stake. It just matters going out and performing.
Now, the big physical question about the Redskins, you've been reading about it all week. How will Darrell Green perform? That painful rib injury when he was returning that punt for the touchdown against the Chicago Bears. Irv has been watching him warm up. And Irv, how does Darrell look? Will he be able to go today?
Brent, Darrell looks pretty good. He will start today. As you all know, that's important to the Redskins because he's the man who's been assigned to cover Anthony Carter all over the field. Now, there wasn't question about his starting status, though, because of his deep religious convictions. During the week, Darrell refused to take any kind of a painkiller. Now, he told me he prayed hard all week long, and on Thursday night, all the pain was gone and he was healed. As a matter of fact, he felt so good he played basketball Friday morning at the Redskins training complex. Now, just a few minutes ago, he told me that he's in a frame of mind right now that he'll do anything he has to do to play in this game, including taking a painkiller. Now, for some reason, Green has difficulty finishing the ball game. The Redskins will substitute rookie Brian Davis in his spot. Now, if that happens, expect the Skins to employ a lot more double coverage against Anthony Carter. Now, for an injury update on Minnesota, let's go to the Vikings side of the field and Will McDonough.
Irv, thanks very much. The Vikings were worried yesterday when they came to practice out here. Darren Nelson, their best running back, and Wade Wilson, their starting quarterback, both had the flu. But this morning I talked with their trainer, Fred Zamberletti, and he told me both are fine today and both will start today. Let's get back to Brent.
Well, thank you. And, of course, everyone says the matchup of Carter and Green is so critical, but if you talk to the assistant coaches, they say this one will be decided at the line of scrimmage on both sides. And for more on that, let's go upstairs now to Pat Summerall and John Madden. Pat?
Well, Brent, you know, assuming that Wade Wilson is healthy and Darren Nelson is healthy, indeed, you're right. The matchups up front will be keys. What about Minnesota?
Yeah, I think this is a great game for linemen. You know, it's that type of game. I mean, they're playing here RFK Stadium, outdoors, on grass, and I think you can talk about the wide receivers, the quarterbacks, but I think it's really going to depend on what happens in the trenches.
What are those key matchups?
Well, I think if you start with Minnesota and you take Gary Zimmerman first, he's the left tackle for the Vikings, and he has to block Dexter Manley. Now, if Dexter Manley gets excited and gets going, he can put a lot of pressure on Wade Wilson. And probably the biggest matchup, though, is a right tackle, Tim Irwin, against Charles Mann. I think right now, Charles Mann could be the premier pass rusher in the league. I know we were talking to Jerry Burns yesterday. He said the first thing we have to do is stop those defensive ends.
And as you know, Doug Williams needs some time. What about on his side of the line?
Well, I think that's equally important. You know, you start off and it's going to be on that left side, Big Joe Jacoby against Chris Dolman. He's probably the next best pass rusher in the league. And I think this may be the most important matchup. Riley McKenzie, the left guard of the Redskins, against Keith Millard. Millard has been playing great in these playoff games. Doug Williams likes to stand in there. Millard is going to get the pressure up the middle if McKenzie can't get him blocked. That's a big one.
Those are matchups we'll be watching. Back to you, Brent.
All right, Pat, thank you. You know, on Friday afternoon here in Washington, our former colleague, Jimmy the Greek, made some regrettable and offensive remarks for which he has apologized. Yesterday, CBS issued a statement disassociating itself from those remarks. It goes without saying that his comments do not reflect in any way the thinking or attitudes of the rest of us here at CBS Sports. While we deplore the incident this weekend, we are saddened that our 12-year association with Jimmy had to end this way. And the NFL Today will continue live from RFK Stadium in Washington in just a moment. It is quiet this week. Congress is in recess, but visitors still look up at that familiar monument to our first president, and they marvel at the view across the water of the Jefferson Memorial, and of course the stately and majestic memorial to Abraham Lincoln. Today here in the nation's capital, all eyes are focused on RFK Stadium, where the beloved Redskins will take on the Minnesota Vikings. 1,300 miles northwest of here on the Canadian border is International Falls, Minnesota, a hotbed of Viking fans. International Falls is known as the icebox of the nation. and home to that monument of sorts, the world's largest thermometer. In downtown, outside the Elks Lodge, our Pat O'Brien is standing by with a live report. Pat?
All right, Brent, thank you. Just to give you an idea of where we are one block from Canada here in International Falls, one of the few places where they celebrate cold weather. Everybody wears a thermometer this time of year. The average temperature about 1 degree above zero. Thanks for the ride, guys. What warms the hearts of Minnesotans now, though, of course, are the Minnesota Vikings. Brent, we're going to go inside the Elks Lodge here. Bobby Johnson, everybody ready in there?
We're going to have a party.
Going to have a party. Inside the Elks, say hello to America here. Hi, Wally, how you doing? Got a special guest for you, Brent. You know, when Wade Wilson was 2 years old, Frank Uso here was protecting Fran Tarkington. He was on the first 3 Viking teams, and the Redskins are tough at home. What do you think of the Vikings' chances today?
I think their chances are real good. I think that the Vikings have had some bad breaks in the past, but I think this year they've got a good defense, and the offensive line is going strong, and they've got Carter and that Wilson, and I think they're going to take it. I think they're going to go all the way.
You played with the Giants. What's one of the most exciting things you ever saw in football, Frank?
Well, let me tell you, now, back in 1958, I saw a field goal kicker for the New York Giants kick a 48-yard field goal in a blinding snowstorm to win the game, and I think he could have kicked it 10 yards farther had they moved the goalpost back.
Frank, thank you. By the way, who was that?
That was Pat Summerall.
Thank you, Frank. Somebody used to go down to Bemidji, Minnesota and watch Frank practice was Helen Robinson. Brent, this is your kind of woman. She loves tough defensive football in cold weather out there on the ground. Helen, what do you think of today? What's the key to today's game?
Well, I really think the key to today's game is defense, and I think it is for us to go out there and score first and scare the hell out of them.
Got a little money on the side today?
Oh, you bet.
It's been exciting around here for you and your friends,
right? It's exciting for International Falls. It's a great thing.
Brent, we're going to be here all afternoon. One disappointment here, they served quiche. Let's go back to you, Brent. We'll talk to you later.
Yeah, but it's grizzly bear quiche. You might also know that that's the home of Bronco Nagurski. Bronco a little under the weather today. I'm sure he's watching on television. Bronco, a former great with the Chicago Bears. We all wish that you get well. Speaking of Super Bowl experience, guess who has the most in this game? The coach of the Minnesota Vikings, Jerry Burns. He has been to 6. The first 2 is the defensive backfield coach for Vince Lombardi's Green Bay Packers, and 4 is the offensive coordinator under Bud Grant and the Vikings. We'll continue live from RFK in Washington in just a moment. The view from the helicopter here of RFK Stadium in Washington, and we have gorgeous weather conditions for this football game. The temperature is 36 degrees. It has been rising all morning. Throw out the wind chill factor. This one's going to be very comfortable today, and only a slight wind out of the south at 8 miles an hour. And it's the Vikings and the Redskins coming up. You know, Washingtonians really cheer for the Redskins, but there's a group of fans that has a financial interest in this game. Will McDonough has Dave Wyndham with him. Will?
Thanks, Brent. This is David Wyndham. He was the linebacker here for the Redskins during the replacement games, and he has every reason to be happy today because replacement players like David get a share of this playoff money. Now, how much money have you got today, David?
Right now I have $14,000.
What happens today if the Redskins win?
Well, I add another 9 to that, and it keeps counting.
What are you going to do with the money?
Well, I'm not going to invest in the stock market for one.
Now, how did you get the tickets for today's game? These are hard to come by.
Well, through the good grace of the Lord, Mr. Cook, he had some tickets set aside for the replacement players. I was one of the ones that came down and I picked my tickets up.
Well, I didn't know Mr. Cook with the Lord, but maybe he is down here in Washington.
Yeah.
Let's go back to you, Brent.
All right, Will, thank you. Much easier for the Redskins to split the pot than the Vikings when their replacement players went 0-3, too, I might point out. The rest of the way, the regulars on both these squads went 8-4, which is sort of an interesting statistic. Irv, while you were out on the field, the weather looks so great. I assume that the weather conditions are terrific for this game?
Well, weather's not a problem, but you know, the groundskeeper told me an interesting thing. If you look down on the southern end of the stadium, you'll see a shadow down there. From the 35-yard line all the way down to that end zone, Brent, and then it kind of comes along up the Washington Redskins sideline. There's a shadow, and the groundskeeper told me the ground's always frozen down there because we won't get any sun until March. Because of the way the stadium is built, no sun comes down and thaw the field. So they had the field covered with tarps and hot air blowing under it all week long. It's in pretty good shape, but it is hard down there.
Yeah, probably a little bit of a home field advantage, especially in our key duel here. Darrell Green against Anthony Carter. And I know you had an opportunity to find out from Darrell, what do you do to stop the Vikings superstar wide receiver?
It is a team sport, but I think when the ball is snapped, it's not a team. It's down the sideline. It's not going to be 11 guys. It's going to be he and I. So it's one-on-one. It is, yeah.
The 49ers tried one-on-one coverage last week, and Carter scaled new heights. Perhaps double coverage will bring him down to earth.
He's really outstanding. I mean, the way he goes up for balls, he seems like he just times it perfect, and he's kind of what we call hang time. He gets up there and just waits, and I've never seen anybody doing what he's done so far.
How do you stop Anthony Carter? You can take anybody of a game if you double him, you know. And if we double him and we can't take him out, we might as well call it a day.
But nothing has worked. The 5'10" receiver just finds the holes.
He's big enough to go inside and have the courage to go inside, yet he have the speed to go up top. So it's going to be tough, but what I do normally against a guy like him, I try to build up my intensity for each play and go throughout the whole play against the guy and not fall asleep.
When it comes time for them to pass, we're going to have to put pressure on Wade Wilson, keep him in the pocket, keep him moving around. And that way, that would break the timing between him and Anthony Carter.
We just hope that possibly he's going to cool off a little bit. He's had 2 tremendous weeks. And I think, you know, the law of averages plays into everything. He can't continue to get all the tips going his way. Maybe we'll get some.
Of course, another key matchup, Brent, will be with the kickers. You know, both head coaches expect this game to go into overtime. Now, if that happens, Chuck Nelson's been kicking very well for the Minnesota Vikings, become a key factor. Now, he's been perfect during the playoffs. 8 field goal attempts, 8 made, 8 extra points made. Now, on the other hand, Ali Haji Sheik for the Redskins has been kind of erratic. But he told me while warming up he feels good today. His rhythm is good. He feels he can hit him from 56 yards out. So if they go down to an overtime, those 2 guys are the keys.
One of the things to keep in mind as the officials get ready to come out here, I have noticed that the Sheik sometimes gets too close to the ball when he's kicking. And when he does that, it's like a golfer. He doesn't have his rhythm, so we can watch that early. NFL Today will continue from RFK Stadium in just a moment. Burns and the Minnesota Vikings coming out of the tunnel now onto the grass here at RFK. And Will McDonough looking at Jerry Burns, who was once an assistant at Green Bay. Who will replace Forrest Gregg as the head coach of the Packers?
Well, I think right now, Brent, the leading candidate is Lindy Infante, the offensive coordinator of the Cleveland Browns. The word on the field here today in the underground, all the assistant coaches saying the word's out that Green Bay is looking for an offensive type of guy to be their next head coach.
Can the league stop, or will they stop the Cardinals' move to Phoenix?
I don't think there's any way they can stop St. Louis from going to Phoenix, Brent. You'd have the biggest lawsuit you ever saw from Bill Bidwell, the owner, and also from Phoenix. But what Bidwell did, he went to all the owners first and tested them and got a positive reaction.
Up in your part of the land, the Patriots, are they finally going to be sold?
As we talk, they are meeting, and I understand from some league officials down here at this game, they expect the deal to be closed within the next 2 or 3 days.
Yeah. Well, Will, right now behind us, the defensive unit for the Minnesota Vikings being introduced. What's your feeling about this defensive 11?
Well, Brent, I think right now they're playing the best defense of any team in the league, and that's why I like them. I think they're a team to beat because their defense is playing so well. They're the best against the run right now in football.
Keith Millard has had a marvelous season, hasn't he, Irv Cross?
Indeed, he has. You know, he was described to me by the quarterback down in New Orleans, Bobby Hebert, that Keith Millard is one of the most dominating defensive linemen in all of professional football. He's very quick. He's the emotional leader of that defense.
Irv, how good are their 3 linebackers?
I'll tell you, you talk about linebacking as a unit, they played very well. You know, David Howard, Scott Studwell, and Jesse Solomon. Solomon has great speed. You know, he told me he ran a 4.6 40. Now, he may be assigned to cover Didier today, and he'll need that speed to cover that big guy.
Will, what about the secondary? Gary Clark seems to get open whenever we watch the Redskins.
Well, when you talk to people around the league, Brent, they say the one area of Minnesota that is suspect is the secondary, and teams like to throw on them deep, and of course this is what Washington does best.
Now here momentarily we will hear RFK Stadium explode when the defensive unit for Joe Gibbs is also introduced to this huge crowd.
Let's go get played.
The safeties now coming down the line and being introduced. Joey Browner. They are waving touchdown towels here on RFK like they did, of course, up in Minnesota when they were Homer Hankies. Should be a tremendous game, everybody. NFC Championship. Washington hosts Minnesota. Coming up next will be Pat Summerall and John Madden with the play-by-play.
Shut him down.
Dirty cops are taking over until she takes charge. Suzanne Plachette is alone in the neon jungle tonight.
He gives the impression of a tough, street-smart, wise guy. His life depends upon convincing dangerous men that he's just that, because he's actually a federal agent trained to infiltrate and destroy the country's ruthless criminal empires from within. Ken Wall is the wise guy. Monday at 10, 9 Central and Mountain on CBS.
This is CBS.
Now, my girlfriend's crazy for that Bruce guy on TV. She says she gets goosebumps, okay? So I asked my barber to make my hair sort of stick up like Bruce's. I figured, great. Haven't seen the show, he says. I bowled that night. Yeah. And then he makes 3 passes at my head like he's trying to land or something. So I end up with a little bare spot on top like Friar Tuck. And now my girlfriend says it gives her goosebumps all right, but not the right kind.
Next time, supercuts. Because nothing grows out slower than a bad haircut.
Riding tall in the saddle has always been a part of the Texas culture, along with standing tall in a pair of boots. And for 10 years, Allen's Boots has kept Texas standing tall. In showing their appreciation, Allen has a large selection of Acme cowhide boots. Tremendous savings on elegant goatskin from Dan Post. And save $100 on Dan Post lizards. Allen's Boots would like to say thanks, Austin, for 10 great years.
Every morning, there's a whole new world out there.
When people really want to know what's happening right now in Austin or around the world, they can count on us.
News Talk 590.
The only full news organization in town.
KLBJ AM.
Radio is the most dynamic, the most moving.
You have to listen to the radio. There's no other way to find out what's happening right now.
When you need to know, turn on the radio to News Talk 590 KLBJ AM.
Cheers, weeknights at 10:30 on Channel 7.
The Minnesota Vikings almost let the playoffs slip away, but when the reprieve was issued, they took full advantage by whipping the New Orleans Saints indoors, thus earning a rainy day outdoors in San Francisco. And with cold efficiency, the Vikings silenced those lethal 49er weapons and unleashed one of their own as Anthony Carter's record-setting performance lifted them to a resounding victory. And now, after 2 stunning upsets, the Viking doubters are no more. Their next hurdle is the Washington Redskins, no strangers to the championship stage. They too played the underdog role to perfection last week by upending the Chicago Bears. The heroics were numerous, from Darrell Green's acrobatic but painful punt return to a defense whose disposition was as sour as a grapefruit. The Redskins simply would not yield an inch. And as a result, for the fourth time this decade, they will battle for the NFC Championship. But lying in wait are the spirited upstarts from the Northlands, a confident bunch that overcame a transition in starting quarterbacks, much like the hometown Skins. And today, each team must confront stiff challenges. Can Minnesota's aerial attack exploit a hobbled all-pro cornerback? Can Washington's offensive line corral the Vikings' unrelenting pass rushers? These are some of the keys that could unlock the door to Super Bowl number 22. Championship game